And how's everyone doing today? My name is Maynard and Kala. I'm the host of the podcast Gears of Trust, and I'd like to thank everybody for following me along. I've got almost 100 downloads now. On my Buzzsprout feed, YouTube, I'm almost to 1,000 subscribers already, and I'm kind of surprised how YouTube's overtaking things, but it is what it is. You can find me on TikTok. You can find me on Facebook, on Instagram. You can find me on Truth Social. You can find me on X. You can find me on YouTube. Once again, coming into January 2025, we'll launch my book, Onward Buttercups, and from there, I'll drive off into training. Today, I got a new friend I've just made here. My guest today is Kala Murray. Because I'm doing so much with the podcast and everything, vanity's an issue for me now, I gather. So I got my teeth whitened. And guess what? Kala looked after my teeth and got things going. We got chit-chatting during the session. And then she didn't have things jammed in my mouth. Let's go on this. I asked her to be a guest on the podcast. Really pleased to have her here today. And I'm going to introduce her right quickly. She lives in Fort McMurray. Kala, she's a small business owner at her home-based business. She's also a gold seal tradesman as well as a project manager. So that being said, I stole your thunder, Kala. I'm going to get you to fully introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Oh, good. Awesome. As Maynard mentioned, I am Kala Murray. I am a red seal carpenter. Been in the trade for over a decade now. Worked my way up, went into a site superintendent role, got some great opportunities given to me that allowed me to grow into move up the ladder, go into the site superintendent, up to a project manager. I've been really fortunate. I've had some really great teams, and yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So you were site superintendent.
Yes.
So, wow. So now I'm going to start with the questions, a whole series of questions. So you came right out of high school with a desire to be a carpenter. So let's go with the desire to be a carpenter first, right? So
I actually didn't. So my dad, he was a carpenter scaffolder. So I grew up and he was constantly pulling me into the garage. Like, come on, let's go make something. Let's go make something. And I really, really enjoyed it. I really liked the creative aspect of it, working with my hands, and the sense of accomplishment when you actually build something and you get to see the final result, in a physical form. That was really, it was a big thing for me.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to do it as a career. I actually rejected it for quite some time. I went into car detailing. I did some other things, and then eventually I ended up, I had my daughter, and I was a single mom. And then I was like, you know what? I got to do something. I was like, I really like carpentry. It's kind of just been a almost in spite of dad, I shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? Let's give it a shot. I mean, it doesn't have to be my career, but it's always going to be something to fall back on. And it's a great skill to have. It's really, really beneficial. So I kind of went in that route. So I did take a couple years off after high school before going into the trades.
So you went into it just with the mindset to become a licensed tradesman on the deal?
Well, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I applied to universities and for a nursing student, and looking back, I would have been the worst nurse ever. And I didn't really have the desire to go into university. And I had so many friends that were going into university and college, and they're coming out and they weren't able to find work. And it's I don't know if this is really the path for me.
Yeah.
Also with a small child at home, it was kind of it's hard to go to school full time and raise a family and stuff. Whereas trade school, it kind of gives you that benefit where you get to work 10 months out of the year, and then you go to school and you're still paid through school. Don't get me wrong, it's not a great income, but it was the best opportunity that I had for my life situation. And then obviously I got into it, ended up really liking it. I started off in residential down in central Alberta, and then I came back up here. I was actually born and raised in Fort McMurray. I left for a few years, but I came up after the fires because obviously rebuilds were required.
Yeah. Good place to be a carpenter at that time, eh?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. So you did residential construction. Did you get to do any time at sites at the oil sands, or?
You know what's funny is I've never stepped foot on one of the oil sand sites. and I was
Really?
born and raised here. Yeah, I got a few job offers when I moved back up here after the fires out at site, but
Yeah.
because I was a single mom of a small child, it didn't really make much sense because I was like, well, what happens if something happens when she's at daycare or at school? And like, how do I can't just hop on a bus and go pick her up. So it
Yeah.
was, I never took any of those opportunities just because personal choices, but I
Yeah.
don't
That's
regret
fair
it at
enough.
all.
Yeah, I didn't say there's anything wrong with it, but usually anybody that's been in Fort McMurray is usually drugged to the sands once or twice in their careers, right?
They tried.
So you picked up your red seal south of the province in the southern part, or did you pick it up here in Fort Mac?
I started it in central Alberta and I finished it up here.
Oh, well, fair
Yeah.
enough.
I did my first and second year in Red Deer, and then I did my third and fourth at Keano.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So how did you move from licensed carpenter? So now Kayla is a licensed carpenter. How did you become a superintendent?
So when I moved back up to Fort McMurray, I got an opportunity at a really great company, and they were struggling. They had a project that they were really struggling with, as far as budget, schedule, and it was rebuild related. So one of the managers came to me and said, "Hey, like, we have this sinking ship. Like, we want to give you an opportunity to like show us what you can do," because I had kind of like the site super experience a little bit from when I was in Red Deer. Like I was managing
Yeah.
like the smaller home thing, and they were like, "Well,
Yeah.
here's an opportunity. Let's see what you can do with it. Like, help us stop this ship from sinking." And that was it. Like I went into it guns a-blazing, and I was determined to show that I had the drive and the knowledge and the leadership skills to get it done. And that
Well,
was a great opportunity that I was handed, and that was basically it. I didn't really go back down to just being on the tools after that.
so you went balls to the wall, get the job done, and away you go, eh?
Yeah.
So just hammer down.
Yeah.
So how many years did you do that?
6.
So, 6 years.
Yes.
6 years as a superintendent right here in town, right around.
It was between 5 and 6 years because
Yeah.
I was just a carpenter for a little bit, and then switched over to a warranty coordinator when it was in the slow season, but it was still site supering a couple smaller projects throughout as well.
So how big of a crew did you have to deal with, Kelly?
The biggest crew that I had as far as like own force labor, I think we had about 15 at the highest point, but then we had all of our subcontractors and stuff outside of that as well.
Oh wow! So you're doing that. So you did that for 5 years, 6 years. So that kind of leads you into the project management side of the street.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So project management, what are you doing with that now?
So I'm now working in government. So it was a little bit of a shift for me because I went from being like the person who worked for the client to being the client. So now I'm managing from the other side. And it is different, but I'm really enjoying it.
So what do you mean it's different? That you're more of an administrator, budgetary type of person, or
No,
you
not so much. So when I was on the client side working as a general contractor, we have the client come to us and say, we want you to build us this. And then it was my job to get these deliverables and hand it over to the client. Whereas now I'm almost the client. So I'm a project manager on the client side. So I'm the one who's going out and saying, this is what we need done. These are the projects that we need done. It's not necessarily all administrative because I am boots on the ground quite a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, rather than I'm the one with the deliverables, I'm asking for the deliverables.
Okay. So you're out actually measuring activity and stuff from a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
On top of that. Well, that's cool. And then, last of all things, you get some stuff going on at home and kind of what we call a gig economy. I call it a gig economy and it's a more common trend than not. I was just talking to a guy the other day, he's a welder / tattoo artist, tattoos out of his house. And so what do you do from your house?
I started with just doing lash extensions, and the reason I started was when I was still working on my apprenticeship, because during that 2-month period that you're going to school, as I mentioned, you do get paid, but it's not your full wage. And living in Fort McMurray, like the cost of childcare and groceries and everything, it's pretty high. So I was just sitting there thinking one day, like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm going to school in 6 months. What am I going to do to kind of offset some of those costs? I mean, obviously, put some money aside and whatever, but you also want to kind of keep up your lifestyle if possible. You don't want to have to be eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or Mr. Noodles just to go to school.
Yeah, yeah.
So I decided to do a lash course, and it was my thing. I was just going to use it to help me get through school. And then when I was done school, I was going to stop, and all my clients were like, well, now you can't stop. Now, now we're
Yeah,
coming to see you. So
yeah,
I actually don't do it a ton anymore. I'm only doing a couple clients a week, and that's
yeah.
just to kind of keep up the work-life balance.
Oh, yeah. Just because there's a social aspect to it as well, I suspect, right?
There is, especially because, I mean, I work with a lot more women now, but when I was at the GC, like there was only a couple of us women, and I was with men all day, every day. And I don't care what people say where they're like, oh, working with men, it's less dramatic. It's like, no, like you haven't worked with men long enough. Like men are very dramatic. They're just more upfront and direct about it. Like, whereas women get the more catty aspect of it. So
What do you mean? Okay, well, let's take a look at your. I don't know. Since we're going there, so what do you mean? Like guys are more dramatic than women? Like I'm losing that. It's like
I don't know if more dramatic is the right word, but so have you ever heard people say like working with women is tricky because of the cattiness and
working with women, in my opinion, is a very volatile issue. Uh, it can a guy can get slapped around pretty quick in the corner office, the HR office, just for the inappropriate things said by
yeah.
that time. Uh, I'm old school. Like man, I've been in the workforce for over 50 years now. I'm on my 51st year in the workforce, so that's quite a while. And I can remember back in 1979 when I was in the Navy, and we had this maritime operations study come, or what was called the MAROP study, come through about women in warships, in warship capacity. So, through personal anecdotes and stuff, and other sailors who talked to in foreign ports, American sailors in the late 70s, early 80s had women on war vessels. Created a lot of problems. It did because you'd have guys jockeying over positions on a woman and her affections, stuff like that. My spin on it at that juncture in time is if Canada wanted to have women on warships, I'd say go for it, but it'd be a warship completely filled with women with no men, right?
Mm-hmm.
Extremely segregated. Moving forward now, like into the roles I'm in now, I do have a lot of women tradesmen with me, but my conversations with them are very guarded and very safe and very secure. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
very appropriate. And then when I work with a 23-year-old Australian young fella, it's a different type of conversation. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but this also, it irks me a little bit because like we're saying that we want equality, but we don't want equality because then the women go into the workplace and like you said, you're purposely filtering what you say. That's not equality.
It's not equality, it's protectionism.
It is.
It's protectionism.
But I just believe if I'm making a choice to go into a male-dominated workforce and whatever, like every single man who's on that site shouldn't have to change how they act and how they talk and everything just because of my presence. I need to conform to their world.
Have you experienced it where they have? So you go into a workplace, well, predominantly, there's not a lot of women carpenters, not a lot of women mechanics, not a lot of women tradespeople. So you go into a house build, right? Do you find the guys are guarded in conversation around you or what?
With new contractors and with new clients and new trade partners, I always found yes. There's always that transition of getting to know you, like But I feel like that's kind of always the case regardless with new people. You kind of got to test the waters a little bit, but I've for sure noticed like people will tiptoe around me, try really hard not to say the right thing. They'll let an F-bomb drop and they'll be, oh, I'm so sorry. It's like I don't care. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really don't.
Until you establish a level of trust with them, right?
Exactly, yeah.
That makes sense. But you do understand where that male position comes from.
Correct?
Oh,
100%. Like, right. And honestly, like I've noticed that this has changed substantially even since I've got in the trades. Yeah. Like the people are so sensitive, and I don't know if it's because we're seeing more women in the trades, but I don't think so, because it's kind of like every industry seems to be kind of following the same.
I watch patterns, and that comes from being in the restaurant business, I guess, but I look for patterns on everything, and I see a pattern. It's not explicitly women now. It could be race. It could be part of the alphabet gang. It could be any sensitivities. If you're coming in and you're a really sensitive person, you're working with a bunch of shovel mechanics, it's probably not a really good career choice to be hanging around with a bunch of old hairy ass guys who look like when I first started at shovels, the guys had goatees, beards, patches over one eye. It just looked like a bad bunch of pirates, what most shovel crews look like. And let's move forward 15, 20 years, and shovel crews now almost look like the Backstreet Boys, for crying out loud. They're all clean shaven and nice and pretty and well spoken. So there's been quite a transition from what I've seen in my perspective, but there's still to this, well, even more so. You have to be more politically astute, which go in the workplace, which it's nice in some regards, but in some cases there's a safety factor there, right? Because if I don't have good communications with you as a partner, and I'm expecting you to be suspending a pin over my head while I'm in a man basket, and I got a third guy going to shove the pin with a telehandler, it's a rather precarious situation where I have to trust in your abilities for my safety. If we can't even communicate at the lunchroom level, it does create some problems. I'll promise you that.
For sure, yeah.
Well, wild. So, that being said, so now we're into this now, is like, so what type of challenges has that created for you? Being has that hindered you in any way, or how have you overcame problems within that, or what?
I don't know if it's really hindered me. I feel like I've also been really lucky. Like I've always been very openly accepted and welcomed into whatever new group I've been a part of or new team I've been a part of. I do feel like I have to work harder than like a traditional like site super project manager just to build that trust with like a new team. Be like, no, like you guys can come to me with issues, like, but I've changed the way that I lead, like where I'm very open. Like I want to be there for my guys. Like if they're having a shit day, just like communicate it to me. Like don't let somebody get hurt or whatever. Like if you're supposed to be operating a piece of equipment and you got stuff going on at home and you're not mentally there, like come just talk to me about it. Like, and I think that's also a little bit different for people. Like it's tricky trying to create that place of, like you said, trust and safety with your teams and whatever. And I do feel like as a woman, I had to work harder in some aspects, but in other ways, I feel like it almost made it easier because men have this stigma where you're not supposed to be vulnerable. You're not supposed to have emotions or feelings or talk about them or whatever. And I feel like sometimes guys almost feel more comfortable talking to like a female about it because then they're not getting that, oh, grow up, stop being a fucking pussy from the other guys.
Yeah. I understand that. I'm almost guarded our conversation right here. That's brutal, isn't it? This podcast, I want this to be wide open, really, what I want it to be. But yeah, it's a precarious situation for guys. It's not.
Yeah.
I know where you're coming from, but from a guy's perspective, it's still not safe.
No, it's not. It's very different. And it's not just the women entering the trades that have that transition. It is the men who have been working in these trades for years and years and years and haven't had to filter what they say or think about their reactions or like you have a guy, something happens on site, they take the hard hat off, they throw it at the wall or something like that. There's a little fit of rage, but like as soon as a woman's around, guess what? That guy becomes now dangerous.
He suppresses that.
Yeah, exactly.
That. He'll think about that in the background instead of focusing on task.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, I see that. I've experienced that. Absolutely, 100%. So over your career in the game here now, so you're a ticketed person, you've been in supervision, you're into management now. So leadership throughout your career, what types of leadership have you seen?
I mean, I've seen all types of leadership, and it takes all types of leadership. Every corporation, every company, every team you're a part of, there's going to be people who lead and guide in different ways. There's going to be the people who are the boss or the manager or whatever, and that's how they see themselves. And they crack the whip and whatever. And then I feel like the past few years, like you said, there has been a shift, and now we're moving towards like more servant leadership type things and showing people how to do things. I've had some concerns. I actually left a job because of leadership issues. I had an incident and I wasn't happy with how the incident was handled. And I had some conversations with leadership afterwards, like after I had some time to kind of process what had happened and how it was handled and everything. And I didn't feel like they had a desire to make any changes or make it right. So I just basically had to sit back and say, like, is this the type of people that I'm okay with working with? Is this the type of leader that I want to become and move forward with? And ultimately the answer was no. So I ended up finding a new opportunity and moving on.
So was it a safety issue, or was it a conflict resolution issue, or was it
it was a safety issue.
So it's a safety issue and they didn't deal with it.
I had somebody get severely injured on one of my sites.
Yeah.
And
while you were supervising, yeah. Or you were a coworker, or you were supervising?
No, I was a site superintendent, and I had somebody fall 20 feet.
Wow.
And I was the first person there, so I had somebody essentially like bleeding out in my hands, and my guys were fantastic. Like, I cannot say enough about how my team, like, I am so proud of every single one of them and how they handled the situation. They pulled their pants up. Like, we had guys making a path for paramedics. We had the guys waving the ambulance in. Someone was getting the emergency kit, the first aid kit. They handled it really well. It was just how, the leadership handled it that I wasn't happy with. He ended up being okay. But what happened was, obviously, it was a very stressful situation. My manager came down. The safety manager came down. We made sure everything was taken care of. He was off to the hospital. But then my manager sent home all of my guys. I had 16 frostbiters with socks blowing out into the atmosphere. And he had sent all of my guys home. So then I had to deal with it after holding this person who was bleeding out in my hands. And like, during that moment, I didn't feel like, I probably should have felt more emotions than I did, but I didn't, because it's like your fight or flight, it kicks in. And it's like, it's really surprising how much you remember from the first aid or the training. It's like, you know what to do in that situation. I was holding him and I was going through the steps in my head, and this is about 5 minutes after the situation. So like, most things are basically under control and we're just waiting. I'm going through the steps in my head. And the only thing that I forgot, and I pulled my hand out and my hands were covered in blood. The only thing I forgot was the gloves. But yeah, so then everybody leaves, and then it's like that wave of emotions. Like, you're finally able to process what just happened.
Yeah.
And the fact that I was alone and had to like deal with all of that was so shitty.
So was there no like aftercare or debriefing or counseling for you after the incident?
Not that day, no.
Not that day, but it did
No.
come in time.
No.
No, it never came in time.
Not really. So the next day, we all came in first thing in the morning again, and my manager did come down. He kind of updated the team and everybody on the situation and how the person who was injured was doing. And then that was basically it, kind of back to work, whatever. And I think I hadn't fully processed it still, so I was just like, okay, well, this is what we're supposed to do. So we just went back to work, and then it was a couple weeks later, and I sat down with one of my guys, and I was like, how do you feel? Like, how do you think that this was handled? Because I
Yeah.
like looking back on it, like I don't feel very good about it. Like I feel like I failed you guys. I feel like my management and my leadership failed me, and it's just a little bit of a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he said, you know what? He said, you're right. And the guys in the lunchroom, like, we've discussed this a little bit. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, so if everybody's feeling this way, like, what do we do? So we talked to management about it. Like, I brought my safety manager down. Like, I had a one-on-one conversation with him. And I said, you know what? I don't think we handled this very well. Like, we sent everybody home. We didn't really ask how anybody was doing. Like, in the lunchroom we did. But I mean, who's going to speak up when you're there with a bunch of your peers and you're trying to be tied up?
Yeah.
No one's going to say that, oh, I'm really struggling. Like this, like we don't know people's history or if they've experienced incidents before for re-triggering some sort of PTSD from something. Like we just don't know.
Yeah.
And my safety manager, he was so good. He handled it really well. He came down to the site and he let my guys just tear into him for like an hour. And but it was the other leadership. It was the senior management and stuff like that. And I don't think that they ever really there was a big empathy piece missing there, I think.
So the senior management was just probably out to cover their ass.
And that's what it was. And I felt like I got a lot of the blame for it. They're like, oh, this is your site. And it's like, yes, but I mean, there's things in place. There's protocols. There's like, it wasn't like a accident like it was, but a barrier had to be physically breached before that incident could have happened. It's not like I just left a big hole.
Yeah. So it's like major incidents like that. I usually paraphrasing this a plane crash, right? It's a whole series of things that happen. Usually a bunch of little things that lead up to that one big event. So it's usually not just one isolated incident that creates a situation, right? But I have personally experienced with management covering their tracks. So I go to say it, like, and I've seen some pretty massive stuff where 3 guys almost got taken out on the play in one incident.
Yeah.
And then fast forward 9 years, we've got potential for reoccurrence, and I started arguing with upper management about how I was going to lift the shovel, and I recanted the incident with that guy. And he said, no, we'll do it this way. I said, well, I'm not doing it that way. And I said, we had an incident on this unit, and we had 3 guys who were almost killed. We damaged this, we did that, we did this. And he said, no, we didn't. I said, yes, we did. So being management myself, I went into the system, the safety system, and I can select incidents by pieces of equipment, put in pieces of equipment. There's no such incident on it. So I said, well, I'm old. Maybe my memory sucks. So I took the sister piece of equipment and did the history on that. And guess what? There was an incident on that. So then I went and saw the safety lady. I said, Jessica, I was checking this out. Should have been a pretty substantial incident, blah, 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 blah. With mines inspector and everything should have been involved in it. And I can't find it. She looked into it. She said, no, you're using the system right. It's not there. So then I went and talked to one of the foremen that was involved in that incident. And I said, hey, did we not have this? Oh, yeah, we had that. I said, well, I'm in the system and I can't find it. And I'm in an argument with this other guy that I'm not going to do this again. And he just looked at me. He said, well, maybe it wasn't an incident. I said, really? Okay. And within one rotation. I was no longer working there.
Wow.
Yeah, I asked the wrong questions, right? Wrong
Yeah.
people. Does that make sense? But
Yeah, for sure.
that incident should have been reported to the mines inspector and OH&S, and that would have shut things down and stuff like that. So that not even being reported to them at that level.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hate to break the bad news to you, Kayla. You're probably going to see that again. As project manager, I hope you don't ever see that shit again. But you will in life see people at multiple levels covering their ass, right? And with Bill C-245, where you get supervisors and actually get thrown in jail for actions, then they really get pretty intense, right? So I come from a coal mine incident back east to drive that, but yeah, I see that's still quite a tender subject for you.
It is. It was actually
how many years? How many years ago was that?
2022.
Oh, so that's not long ago. That's 5 years or so.
Yeah.
3 or 4 years. That's still fresh.
Oh yeah. No, and it was big for me. Like, it changed everything, and I had some discussions with the senior management and leadership, and ultimately I realized that they didn't want me to be a leader of the people. They wanted me to be a leader of the company, and like you said, help protect the company and push. I mean, I understand. That's what companies do. That's what businesses are for. They're there to generate revenue. You're supposed to protect the company and everything. But like, at my core, we're all humans, and we all, like, we matter more than the baseline.
Absolutely.
And I felt personally like they were trying to turn me into a leader that kind of dehumanized people. And that's when I was just like, you know what, this just isn't the place for me anymore. And I just recognized that I just needed to move on.
Yeah, that's right. That's the right move on your part.
Yeah.
Because you won't change upstairs.
No,
you won't change upstairs. That mindset comes from the highest levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what precipitates that or causes that is the guy at the ultimate high level. They're pretty disconnected as to what's happening at ground level. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they see things in perspective of balance sheets, liabilities, assets, volumes, targets, yada yada yada. So if safety, if I keep my incidents down on safety, my workman's compensation rate lowers. That makes sense. So there's the big drive on lost time incidents. So I have a lost time incident where workman's comp has to start paying wages, your rates will go up. Well, if you've got 1,000 people in your employ and it goes up by $100 a month, right? That's $100,000 a month. Yeah, as simple as that. So that's what drives management into that. And when you at frontline supervision as superintendent, you are in the trenches with the people. And that's quite possibly, in my opinion, after 50 years in the racket, the worst position to be in is that frontline supervisor, or that form, because you're going to take the grief from the guys and you're going to get grief from upstairs, and then you're expected to protect upstairs, but at the same time expected to represent the guys below. And on a good day, it's a precarious situation. So if you love your team and enjoy your team, then you're at odds automatically with management. And I only saw one guy that really loved the lower trenches, and I was at CNRL with a guy named Al Markham. He was the owner of Canadian Natural Resources when it first started up. And him and Murray Edwards and Al Markham, I sat and talked with him, and he's pretty cool. When he started CNRL Horizon, he had everybody within CNRL, not just Horizon site, going to naturopath doctors, having their blood checked. He had everybody's lead fillings pulled out of their mouths.
Oh my goodness.
We had free vitamins. We had holistic practitioners dealing with us on a monthly basis. He was promoting exercise. If you want a gym membership in Fort Mac, Edmonton, wherever we were, send me the bill. I'll look after it. He was just totally driven by his people. Totally.
That sounds awesome,
It,
though.
it was absolutely.
But
And then when he cashed out, then the other half comes in, right? And his mindset towards his people is totally different,
yeah,
right? And that brings that to the business that it is now. So
yeah, for sure.
yeah, pretty cool, eh? So pivotal. We get we get talk about that pretty good. So like pivotal points in your career. What would you say were pivotal points in your career, like to where you are now? Are you happy where you're at now?
I am happy where I'm at now. I always still have more goals. I don't know exactly where I'm going to end up, but continual growth is a big thing that I believe in. Pivotal moments. I genuinely think that first project that they gave me the opportunity to like act as a site superintendent, they were like, come on, like you can show us what you can do. That was a big one because that gave everybody else like the ability to believe in me and be like, okay, well, maybe just with some additional extra training support, like maybe she could be something like a really great asset as far
So
as the projects and stuff go.
someone took a chance on you and you shined.
Yeah, and I mean, it feels good when somebody takes a chance on you, especially being a woman in a male dominated thing. Like they literally threw me into this project that was at like 90% completion.
Yeah.
And one of my old COOs, he always said the last 10% of the project is the hardest to complete. And it really is. It's the most tedious. It drags out. You got to deal with the deficiencies and the closing out the change orders and stuff. And he was basically like, if you can finish this, then I believe that you can do other really great things. And I will always be so appreciative for that opportunity because I do believe that it changed the trajectory of my career.
It must have added a lot of self-confidence for you too, right?
It did, because I mean, I went from almost like helping to manage the residential builds to going back on the tools. And I was further on in my apprenticeship, but it was almost like I had taken a step back. I didn't care too much, if I'm being totally honest. When I came back up, I was working as a carpenter. I was just like, this is just a job till I get my next job, which was going to be the career one. But like the fact that they gave me that opportunity, it's like, well, maybe this can be like somewhere that I stay, somewhere that I care about and put time into making better.
So did you have any doubt in yourself when you undertook that
Always.
role? That's a pretty big role. So you had a lot of self-doubt.
I have self-doubt every single day. Like, I don't know everything. I'm never going to know everything. But that's what teams are for. This is what your people, like, you can rely on your people. There's going to be people working under you that know way more than you do. You need to, like, utilize that knowledge, and you can't feel shame about that.
Yeah. So
there's always doubt, though.
That's the way in which you lead. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's a good way to do that. That's the most effective way to do that too, right?
Yeah.
I say that to people all the time. I think I mentioned it the other night that I've written a book about building teams and stuff like that, and that's one of my foundations, my core foundations to it is to have people show you what they can do and then bring their abilities to the forefront.
And, for sure.
Absolutely. Everybody has a different strength. You have a different strength than I have and to the guy next to me. But once we take 10 people with 10 different strengths, all of a sudden this team can do 10 different things at very high levels too, right? And it's teaching your team when to go into support role and when to go into lead role. So you're very wise for your years, young lady.
Well, thank you.
So now you're in a project management. So do you get the hands-on leadership now, or are you more of a contract administrator role?
It's kind of complicated to explain it, but I'm big on, like, we determine what needs to be done, developing the scopes of work, getting them sent out, and then I'm acting as almost like a client side project manager, where I'm making sure that the quality is there.
So you're the customer. You're the customer. Yes. You're the customer, and you're the quality assurance person within the customer's realm.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. But you have the knowledge to put together to know when you're being hoodwinked or not.
Yeah. So because of that, I spend a significant amount of time in the field and in the drawings and in the specs and stuff like that. Like I am more technically involved than you would typically see.
But you have to be somewhat politically savvy too.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little.
I'm not
a
gonna
little bit.
The transition from a site trailer to a corporate office was a bit of an adjustment for me, and it still is. My mouth. We have a swear jar in the office, and
Yeah.
no, it's different. It's a different world than I'm used to, but I enjoy it. It's a nice change, and it teaches you. Like, I get the opportunity to learn about from the other side of it, which gives me a better understanding.
So how much money have you put into the swear jar, Kaylin?
More than I would like to admit. So, but my boss's wife made up this swear jar, and she put a price thing on the back. Like, it tells you how much each swear costs. And my goodness, she must think that we're all rolling in dough, because her price scale is way out to lunch. Even my manager was like, "I'm not paying that." So,
but myself personally, you still there? Myself personally, I like people who swear.
I do too, because it's
because when we're at that level and we can talk like that, then we're not doing a dance. Then we're really communicating, right? Like, I like raw.
It needs to be used as a communication or conversation enhancer, instead of, like, I don't like when people just drop an F-bomb every second word just because it's there.
You wouldn't like being a mechanic. We use it like a comma some days.
Oh, well, I mean, we're not amazing either, but
yeah, I find it a true way to communicate. Is that a good way to say?
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's a good
unfiltered.
Yeah, unfiltered, raw, and just like real, just real. Because actually that enables you to know exactly what my intents and my thoughts are, and beliefs,
exactly,
and emotional status, and that kind of goes back to the front of our conversation when you're dealing with people in that politically correct scenario. I can't guess what you're thinking, right? And if I'm being an idiot, I just assume you tell me, "Hey, man, you're being a fucking idiot." then I can deal with that. Like, I'm conditioned to that. I'm married for 22 years, whatever. I've been told I'm an idiot before. I'm going to surprise him, but I know that I'm not perfect, and I'm going to step on toes by times, stuff like that. But the best way to correct that is to let me know when I do it. When I deal with guys at work, my mouth is my gift and my curse, because and humor, being humor, man. Like, if you and I are having a conversation and a funny thought comes to my head, it usually coming out of my mouth and doesn't get filtered. So especially if you're asking me questions, as a leadership capacity, the first time you've ever seen this piece of equipment or whatever, I am a horrible man for coming with quick answers at you right back and just trying to be funny, because that's what comes through my head. So I tell people that if you're working with me and you ask me a question, the first reply is going to be the funniest thing that's in my head, and it's coming out and it's not filtered. then we get serious after that. I have one guy at one place I was supervising, and I was just in one of my silly moods that day, and the phone there, we had to dial 9 to get out, and then another 9 for an outside line, and what you call this? So he comes into the office there. He says, "Hey, Maynard, how do you use this phone?" I said, "Well, it's really pretty cool. You pick it up and dial a bunch of numbers." I said, "Usually there's someone on the other end all the time, but I absolutely love it." Yeah. So he gave me the middle finger, and I said, "No, dial 9 and 9 to get out." On his exit interview, he says, "That smart ass supervisor you got should be making fun of people when they don't know how to use the phone."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that's a classic example of me in my mouth, man. It gets you in trouble.
I can't believe you brought it up in an exit interview, though.
On an exit interview too, and he left for a whole multitude of reasons, but he had a lot of things on the go, and classic mechanic coming to the oil sands. He was living in his Dodge Caravan and stuff. And was, really nice. But my humor didn't fall on the right audience that day, apparently, right?
Yeah. Which, I mean, that'll happen.
So, like with stereotypes and encouraging inclusion. So, we talked about building teams. This is cool because I love teams. That's what I've written books about. Inclusion. Man, that's a big word, man. Diversity, inclusion, all that good stuff. So in your roles in the past, did you actually have to promote inclusion, or did you just leave it foster itself naturally, or how exactly did how did you develop respect within your team? I guess it's a good way to do it.
I mean, sometimes that's a tricky one because there's some things where you have to actively work towards inclusion, and there's other things that just happen naturally while you're a part of the team, as long as you allow that open communication between the team and whatever. Like, sometimes it's a matter of, like, sure, you guys just go have it out, like, yell at each other, do whatever. But
have you ever done that? Have you ever brought team members into a room and say, okay, guys, you say what you got to say and you got to say what you got to say?
Yeah, and I've sat there as the mediator in case it gets too heated and someone stands up and slams a table, and it's like, no, man, like, come on. Like, we're going to get in trouble soon here. It works great.
You find that you're really...
I do. I think that communication and lack of communication is a base of most of the issues that we come across.
So is HR supportive of your technique of doing that?
I was at a company where we didn't have great HR support, so I didn't actually involve them. It was kind of just internal, and it never had to be escalated beyond that.
What was a key trigger that you knew you had to pull your guys aside to say, hey, listen, let's get this shit out in the open to deal with it? Like, what initially, like, made you do that? Give me some more.
Just hostility. Guys coming into my office, into my desk, being like, I can't work on this. This guy fucked this up. I'm not working with him anymore. It's like, okay, well, we're all part of the same team. Like, pointing fingers doesn't necessarily help. Like, we can come together, or it's just a lot of that, a lot of finger pointing, a lot of, I don't want to work with this guy. He called me an asshole yesterday. It's like, okay, well, why did he call you an asshole? Like, is this something we can get over, like, really quick without having it be a thing? Because guess what? You guys have to work together. You're on the same team. So if you can't find a way to do that, one of you is going to be gone.
Yeah.
In one way or another, whether it's of your choice or the company's choice or whatever. But I mean, like I said, I feel like communication is the base of a lot of the issues that we run into.
Wow. You're pretty sharp.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've seen over the years, right? I've got a couple of weeks at this game more than you. And when you're supervising, you're fixing people, not machines. That's what I tell people all the time. That's exactly one of the key indicators I get is when I get a team that's not functioning right, I'll get different members coming in complaining about other different members. And 90% of the time, through my experience, I've not seen team member A confront team member B about the way he's acting or doing things. And I actually had to at site bring 5 guys into a CCAN. I needed them on my outage team. And it's the same scenario. I don't want to work with him. He's this and he's that. And he's this and he's that. And I called it picking the scab off the sore. So I had an infection and we had to clean up the infection. We got to take the scab off and get the infection out.
Yeah.
And I slammed the door to CCAN. Everybody did, and nobody's coming out till we get this shit sorted, boys. Right? Because back to that little story where if I'm up in the basket and you're pushing the pin and this guy's suspending the pin, we need 3 guys with equipment, and I can ruin your day pretty quick if I don't like you. I can bump you out of a basket with a fork and a telehandler really fast. So that's exactly what we had to do. We had to one of those sessions in the CCAN. I know if HR ever found out that I did it, I'd been gone that day, but at the end of the day, those guys to this day still get along. You know, we're talking 12, 15 years later, but they had the opportunity. Once I started the process of them saying, hey, you're like this and you're like that, then the guy could actually refute that and say, oh, no, well, here's what I was thinking. Oh, here's what I was thinking. And you get through that, you know. So you have developed a technique that a lot of people never ever do in their careers as supervisions in supervisory capacity. A lot of supervisors don't use that technique. And I don't even know if it's a strategic technique that's taught or whatever. But
I don't think it really is, but it's the quickest and the most effective because I mean, I never really had to get HR involved in too many issues when I had my team. But I know that they would have taken a different approach, which wouldn't have resolved the issue. And then we would have been in the same situation again a couple weeks down the line.
Then you're really walking on eggshells.
Exactly.
Yeah, when you get people on performance improvement programs or this guy, you watch for anything he says and you watch for anything he says and come tell me what they said. Yeah, it just makes for a real tough work environment really fast.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, cool. All right, so let's lighten up a bit. Tell me a funny story. What's your funniest story from all the years when you got building houses and throwing hammers and breaking nails off and putting in deck screws wrong? And
I don't know. I'm having a hard time thinking of some funny stories. I'm sure there's tons from over the years, but I'm drawing a blank a bit.
What's the funniest thing you ever seen done incorrectly?
Oh, I can't talk about that because those all involve. Can't get myself in too much trouble here, Maynard.
You haven't seen things done in new home construction where you go, what the hell was he thinking?
Oh yeah, lots of stuff. But
I know in the mining equipment world, I've seen repairs done that you look at it, you go, what the hell they were thinking? But
oh yeah, it's funny even how safety's changed through the years. Like things you wouldn't have considered to be a safety issue 5-10 years ago is now a huge deal. So,
but what do you mean by that? So how safety changed over a period of 10 years, a period of 15-20 years? Like, yeah, end of the day, you want to get home safe. Nobody goes to work and says, I'm going to get busted up today, and that's my objective for the day.
100%.
So how do you think it's changed?
Maybe it's because I started my apprenticeship in central Alberta. But I found that when I came back up to Fort McMurray, I think it's because it's such an oil field, trade-driven town. They took things so much more seriously safety-wise than I found they did in central Alberta. And I don't want to say central Alberta sucks, but...
Well, yeah, but it's a different industry. So in Red Deer, you're popping together houses. Do you ever put roofing on with no fall arrest?
Oh, yeah.
Come to Alberta, come to Fort Mac, do you wear fall arrest when you're doing roofing?
Oh, yeah. Man, I used to have guys roofing, like, shirtless, shorts on, just running shoes. But then, yeah, you come up here and people got to be decked out full on whatever. OHS is driving around. I found there, but even since, like, then I just feel like safety has become which is great. Don't get me wrong. I think safety is important. I really do. But I feel like some things are overkill, and a lot of it just seems to be common sense stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know what
common sense isn't so common anymore.
I know, but how do we fix that? We can't put a guard in place, or we can't stop every incident from happening, because a lot of it does come down to common sense.
So what you have to do when you have a team that's really performing at a high level, and here's the key to it, they have to be comfortable enough with each other that I will let you see my mistakes and correct me when I'm being wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So if you and I were working together, Kayla, and Maynard's going to do something stupid, I would ask it, hey, you say, Maynard, idiot, don't fucking do it that way. This is going to happen. And vice versa. We need to have that same line of communication going the other way. When you get that team to that level, that's when your safety really kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
Because then they are open, that they're not worried about repercussions of their statements. Right? So it's like I saw one guy at this new place I'm working now. He hops in the man lift and he goes up to do this job, that job, whatever comes down. He didn't even put fall rest on. Where I live, my work world, just end of story. Right?
Yeah.
So there's how do I handle that? Do I go report that, run that flagpole? Bang! As soon as that guy gets fired, then that affects his family. There's no groceries. The wife's get this. You don't know what. There's a ripple effect of people losing employment. You know what I said to the guy? If you go in my service truck, there's extra follow rest there, man.
Mm-hmm.
Help yourself to it. Don't even ask. That's all I said to the guy, right?
Yeah.
So he knew right then that he fucking caught me.
But you're right.
He's not. But guess what? The next time I work with him, he grabbed follow rest out of my truck because it was cleaner than the stuff in his truck, and he used it.
Yeah.
What's the right way to do that? Right? That's what's the right way to do that. So,
but I find it's tricky because what I see sometimes is rather than correcting a safety issue or addressing it on the spot, like you said, people will take that path and they'll report the issue. It's like you're leaving somebody in danger the longer you don't mention it to them.
You know what sickens me is some people use that for career advancement.
Well, that's what I mean. And people are reporting things.
I've seen that. In that case, if that's what I learned over the years. If that's the type of business I'm dealing with, maybe I don't want to be with that business. And it's kind of like what brought you to where you are today.
Mm-hmm.
You acknowledge you can't change it. You acknowledge there's no empathy. I'll get it out, folks. Really, don't go away. Stay tuned. There's no empathy for mistakes. But you know what? People learn by listening, by watching, by doing, and by making mistakes. There's not one of us have learned how to walk without falling. I promise you that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So as soon as you make a mistake, it's game over. You kick you to the curb. You might be the best technician or the best project manager, the best employee on the planet. If you make a mistake, it's a good excuse to shit can you? In my opinion, it's absolutely not. No. What I like to do is I like to promote a safe environment.
Mm-hmm.
I like people to think about their safety, and I like people to watch other people who are being unsafe. Because if I have an unsafe member on a team, I will confront him. I won't take advantage and say, look, I have one guy, he dropped a 6-foot bar right by my head, bounces off my helmet. Never warned me it was coming or nothing. Never. Like he knew he was letting go over. He let go over, and I'm lying there at 2 a.m. trying to get a coupler off, and bang, it bounced off my helmet. Yeah. Guess what? We get a safety issue now, but I dealt with a one-on-one on that. Remember that CCAN conversation or what you've done with your people, and actually, dealt with it. At the end of the day, the guy never ever did change the ways. He's not with us anymore.
Yeah. But and that's a sad part is some people just never want to do better or be better, even though it impacts themselves and everybody else around them.
Yeah, well, that type of person is not even really part of a team. That person will probably never be part of a team, right? So some people get a kick to the curb, absolutely, right? But I don't like kicking people to the curb over mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is smart enough to foresee the future. I can't foresee the future. I don't believe you can, unless you can.
Unfortunately.
A wish, eh? But yeah, I don't subscribe to that shit can of person over a mistake. I don't like that. But it happens. And like I said, some people use that for career progression. And let's put it this way, we don't play Yahtzee on the weekend, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Cool. So, last topic, things you do at home. So we got the eyelashes. I'm not getting any eyelashes done. I'll be back.
You're not? Oh.
So, you don't fluff up mustaches or anything, do you? No?
No, maybe. I'll get some mustache extension stuff in.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, so what type of that brings a different world, different atmosphere to you, right? So you're not. Yeah. So when you have clients come to your house there for all the neat little things that you do, so do you find any personal sense of reward in that or what?
I do. Like I said, it was initially because to help us financially while I was in school. And now it's kind of just become it's what we use when we want to go do something. Money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of separate. So that's nice in a way that it doesn't feel like it's coming out of like our income. You know what I mean? Per se,
Yeah,
it
on
is, but
a
it isn't.
household budget, it's Play Buddy.
Exactly. And I mean, I know you don't understand like the whole women side of it and how women feel like a sense of confidence with their looks. And I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sure you know it to some extent, but I feel like it is a little bit exaggerated.
yeah,
Um, it's nice to make people feel nice. Like when
yeah,
people look in the mirror and they're like, "Oh my God, I love my lashes," or "My teeth are so much whiter." Like I'm not embarrassed to smile anymore. Like
yeah.
it's nice. It gives you like a sense of like you're doing something nice for somebody else that they can't do for themselves.
So you're a giver. You like helping people at heart.
I do. I do like helping people.
Yeah. So that's where that personal satisfaction gratification comes from right there, man.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. That's absolutely a good thing. Hmm. Anything else you want to talk about, Kayla?
I don't think I've got anything now.
Hmm. Well,
But I
I think
appreciate you having me on. I really do. I think it's a really great thing that you're doing here. And it's really cool that you've opened up a space where people can be raw and real about the trades or the oil sands or whatever.
there's
Whatever
pretty cool. There's pretty cool people in the oil sands, man.
there are.
This is growing into more than what I thought it was going to be. In all
Yeah.
honesty, I'm having a lot of fun and I'm learning a lot. I'm
Oh, I
really,
bet.
yeah. What's the stories you hear, man? It's just amazing.
Yeah. Everybody has stories. Nobody tells them though, or not very many people tell them.
You know, a lot of people only get the opportunity to tell them,
Yeah,
right? So some
for
people
sure.
want to tell a story and they don't have the opportunity to put it out there. And I like to use this as that vehicle for people to talk. So
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
talking's all what I am about. So that being said, since we're going to talk, follow me on YouTube, follow me on Instagram, on Facebook. If you want to be on the episode and you've got something you'd like to talk about, if you don't meet me in person, such as Kayla has, you can get a hold of me on Facebook, on Messenger. It's usually the best way to get a hold of me. Love to have a chit chat. I don't have any boundaries on topics as far as that goes. Upcoming episode here, January 24th. I am going to make a little shameless plug here. January 24th, I'm talking with a guest, Rob Hilditch. And Rob Hilditch has created a website, Social Chemistry. We're into January here now, and this episode is going to drop into it. January 24th, we'll be talking about suicide and mental health. Rob tried to take his life in 2003, and from that, he grew. He didn't succeed, and he created a website called Social Chemistry, and it's about mental health and talking about your issues and stuff like that. Really cool website. I'm going to push that really hard. Subscribe to me, please, on YouTube. Like and follow. It really helps, gets me out there to talk to more people. Kayla, I need to stay back after I close off the broadcast here because we have to download this recording so I can edit it and all that good stuff. Once again, thanks for tuning in to Gears of Trust. It's been fun. Kayla, I will see you here right in a second. And listeners, thank you very much for tuning in. And we're out of here. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.